You've probably heard the story of the rich man and the camel, right? It's one of those super famous biblical warnings about money. But what if we've been looking at the wrong part of the story this whole time? Today, we're going to dig into an interpretation that says the real message, the big takeaway, is not what we think it is at all. Seriously, what if the camel and the needle, the two things we all remember, are really just a bit of dramatic flair, a setup for a question that's way deeper and hits home for every single one of us? Let's get into it. So the story kicks off with a character often called the rich young ruler. And you gotta know, he's totally sincere. He comes to Jesus running and kneels down. This is not some casual chat. He's asking the heaviest question there is. What do I have to do to get eternal life? Jesus tells him, keep the commandments. And the man's like, done. I've been doing all that since I was a kid. Now, this next part is so important. The text says that Jesus looked at him and loved him. This isn't some bad guy. He's a good person. He's righteous. But then Jesus hits him with a challenge that just changes everything. Go, sell all you have, and come follow me. And he just can't do it. But look at how he reacts. He walks away grieving. He's not mad. He's not arguing. He's genuinely sad. His wealth is a real roadblock for him. And it's his sad exit that leads Jesus to make one of his most famous and, frankly, startling statements. And there it is, the line we all know. I mean, on the surface, it sounds completely and utterly impossible. A giant animal, a tiny little hole. This is where the story gets really interesting. And, according to the source we're looking at, it's also where we tend to get completely sidetracked. Okay, so you've probably heard this theory before. It's the most popular attempt to make sense of this crazy image. The idea is that the eye of the needle was a real thing, a small gate for people in Jerusalem's walls. A camel could technically squeeze through, but only if you took off all its bags and made it crawl on its knees. So the lesson becomes about humility, shedding your baggage. It's a nice, neat little theory, right? It turns something impossible into something just really, really hard. But what if that neat theory is just a total distraction? The source we're exploring says that by trying to water down the shock of the statement, we miss the story's true and way more radical point. And this right here is the heart of the whole argument. Forget the camel, forget the needle gate. That image is just hyperbole. It's over-the-top language designed to get a huge reaction. The real key to this story isn't the wild analogy. It's how the people who were actually there, standing right next to Jesus, reacted to it. They were astonished, and not just kind of surprised. They were completely floored, totally blown away. And we have to stop and ask ourselves, why? What about this statement was so world-shattering to them? The answer? Well, it changes everything. You see, to get why they were so shocked, we have to put ourselves in their shoes. In their culture at that time, being rich and healthy wasn't just seen as being lucky. It was seen as a sign that God was blessing you. So a rich person was considered one of the most righteous, most divinely favored people around. So you see the problem, right? Jesus just told them that this man, who by every standard they had was the most blessed, most righteous person they could imagine, would find it impossible to be saved. So if he can't get in, who then can be saved? That is the real climax of the story. It's not about a rich guy and a camel. It's about this desperate, gut-wrenching question. If the best of the best can't make it, what hope is there for the rest of us? And here's the answer that just turns everything on its head. The answer to the question, who then can be saved, is nobody. Not by yourself. The apostles were right to be shocked. Based on human effort, it is impossible. So the whole point then is that the rich man is just the poster child for a universal truth. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, you can't earn salvation. The story is designed to hammer home the idea that it's impossible for anyone without what the Bible calls the atonement, the sacrifice of Christ, and the grace of God. So let's just lay it out side by side. The common takeaway is basically a warning, hey, being rich makes it almost impossible to get into heaven. But the source's point is so much bigger. It's that saving yourself is impossible for everyone, and the rich man was just the perfect example to make that shocking point. To put it as plainly as possible, this story isn't a narrow critique of having a lot of money. It's this huge, radical statement about what salvation even is. The rich man's problem wasn't his gold. It was that he, just like every other person, couldn't earn his way into heaven on his own. And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to chew on. When we stop obsessing over the camel and the needle, the whole story transforms. It stops being a warning just for wealthy people and becomes a statement about how every single one of us needs grace. So the question becomes, how does that change what this story means to you?